Hello, friends. So it's really been on my mind to talk about imposter syndrome. In fact, I recorded this 20-minute video on imposter syndrome and how it relates to trauma. And then I scratched it because I felt like I wasn't qualified to talk about it. And I just left it alone and then just went on to the next thing. This topic's just been coming up for me, and I really had to sit with myself and examine, okay, what really is imposter syndrome and how does it affect me? Now, I heard about this term years ago, and it was one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that resonates. And then I just carried on. I didn't really understand how serious it was, and I didn't understand how it affected me throughout my life. And so a few weeks ago, I decided to put out this project. I teach on a platform called OutSchool, and I teach art there. I teach art to children from ages 5 to 14, and I love it. Like, I love seeing their progress. However, it actually took me 2 years to join this platform, to teach on this platform. Before joining OutSchool, I taught ESL. I realized I had this natural ability of teaching. Now, it wasn't my first time teaching. I've taught before, but this was really where it was turning teaching into a career. When I decided to join OutSchool and teach on the platform, I was resistant. Like, I felt like I wasn't qualified. I felt like I had no rights to do that, especially being a self-taught artist. I didn't go to art school, so I just felt like, okay, no, like, I shouldn't be teaching art. And so I just felt like this strong force just pushing me into that direction to teach art. I remember my first class that I taught, I was so nervous. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? What did I just do? And it wasn't a big deal. A couple of weeks ago, I just had this idea to start posting some cooking classes on the platform. And I love to cook. I've been cooking for a very long time. I'm Haitian American, and for my Haitian people who are watching, you know, we don't play with our food. Food is a huge thing in my culture. I'm very passionate about cooking healthy meals. I've always wanted to eventually have more of like a plant-based diet. I wanted to share some of these plant-based recipes that I've been making. I spent 3 weeks working on it, and when it came time to actually submit the class on the platform, so it goes through an approval process. When it came time to actually submit it, I froze and I was like, oh my God, Tara, what did you just do? Like, I just spent 3 weeks working on this, and in my mind I was thinking, oh my God, I just wasted my time putting this whole recipe booklet together and making these videos, editing it. Like, why are you doing this? You didn't go to culinary school. You're not a chef. What are you doing? Are you crazy? All these thoughts just bombarded me, and I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? But I submitted it anyway, but I felt really uneasy about it. And the next morning, we went on a nature walk. We love walking. That's usually when we have these deep conversations and just really spend time reflecting on things. I was by the water, just listening to the water. I really just been reflecting on imposter syndrome, and I realized, oh my God, this is what I'm feeling right now. I'm feeling like an imposter. Why? Why am I feeling this way? So I realized, okay, I have to get to the bottom of it, because I started thinking back in the past on different ideas that I've had that I started and then stopped, and just gave up, things that I just gave up on, times where I was working on a painting and then I just painted over it because I was like, oh, okay, just scratch this. And I do that a lot. Like, I paint over a lot of my paintings and I don't really post it. I automatically am like, okay, no, this is not good. Let me just repaint over it. And again, like, I know, like, it's all part of the process, the artistic process, just finding your style and also going by what feels right to you. However, I'm beginning to realize that a lot of times when I do this, it's also because I'm feeling like an imposter, and it shows up when it comes to pricing my work. It shows up when it comes to doing vending shows, art shows, showing up, just showing my work, talking about my work, teaching. Oh my God, like, I feel this a lot, that imposter syndrome, or I feel like a fraud when I'm teaching, when I'm painting. And it's like, what? Wait a minute, why is this coming up? This whole feeling like an imposter, it led me to self-sabotaging a lot of times. And it just really dawned on me, whoa, like, this really has a strong hold on me. And so I started praying about it, because I'm like, okay, this is coming up for a reason. What's going on here? I was scrolling on YouTube, and then I saw this video on imposter syndrome by this woman. It was a TED Talk. I believe her name was Lou Solomon. I'll post the link in the description. It was a very powerful TED Talk. She was talking about imposter syndrome, how it affected her life, and she was also saying how imposter syndrome comes with the Fantastic Four, is what she calls it. The two that really stuck out to me were anxiety and perfectionism. When it comes to anxiety, I realized when it came time for me to post this class on the platform, I froze and I started having like these mini panic attacks. And I remember other times where I felt that way. And when it comes to perfectionism, I've realized I wouldn't go through with an idea or a plan that I had because I felt like I wasn't ready. I realized I over-prepared. I prepared to a point where I'm aiming for perfection. This is all stemming from feeling like an imposter. And she was talking about how we have this feeling of a bouncer coming in and just telling you, hey, you don't belong here, and just kicking you out. And I was like, yes, that's what it feels like. It does feel like somebody's just gonna come out of nowhere and say, what are you doing? You can't do that. And in my case, a lot of times I feel like the people who would come and say, what are you doing? You're not qualified, are people who are close to me. When it comes to this feeling of feeling like an imposter, a lot of times it's because I was looking for validation outside of myself. Before I even watched this video from the TED Talk I mentioned, a couple of weeks ago, I had this whole plan of talking about imposter syndrome because this idea just struck me. Sometimes that happens, it would just hit me. And I recorded this video and I was talking about feeling like an imposter, and I was relating it to trauma. And I was saying how we now live in that troll culture where people can easily cancel you or drag you. And that's been something that I've been witnessing for the past 7-8 years, people just getting dragged on the internet. And for me, it actually made me feel insecure to post, especially on Facebook. I don't really use Facebook like that anymore because of that, because I've seen so many instances where people just got canceled, people just got dragged, and that scared me. I was bullied growing up, and so I've had this fear of being bullied, and it wasn't just being bullied at school. It was being bullied by family members. It was being bullied by people who were much older than me, people that I looked up to, people that were, to me, like, I felt like looking back, I was looking at them as mentors, but no, they weren't mentors. I was a child and I didn't know they were my family. So I thought that this was, that they were guiding me and stuff like that. But it was bullying. I was being bullied. And so I really just been thinking about that and realizing how damaging it actually was, that you're relying on people who should be guiding you and protecting you and empowering you, but what they were doing was they were doing the opposite. They were breaking me down. They were making me feel like I was powerless. They were making me feel like I was worthless, that I didn't have any value. And it's a terrible thing to go through. So now I knew all of this because I have done therapy. I did therapy in my mid-20s. I'm in my mid-30s now. So I've dealt with these things. However, I didn't really realize how much of the imposter syndrome, how, like, the hold that it had on me. And so again, I was talking about it, but then I scratched it. I scratched the video. I was just like, no, what am I talking about? So once I had this conversation, we were on the trail, we were talking about it, and then the next day I saw a TED Talk video, and she said it stemmed from trauma. And I was like, what? So I was on to something this whole time. How imposter syndrome affects artists the most, being an artist and constantly being criticized. I didn't realize how all these years where I wanted to be a professional artist, I just kind of just stayed hidden because of fear of just being bullied, or just fear of being canceled, and just being told by whoever, I don't even know who, but just being told that I have no rights to do this, that I have no rights to sell paintings or to teach it. Saying this, it's actually therapeutic because it makes me realize, like, well, who are these people that you're afraid of, and why are you so concerned about them? Why do I need the validation from people that I don't even know to give me that approval? I listened to this woman talk, and it was just really powerful. And for me, it was just confirmation that I could have an idea in my head that God wants me to speak on, and that God wants to use me as a vessel to speak on it, and to say it in a way that somebody else will understand. When this woman was talking about her childhood, it made me think of mine. It made me think of, like, whoa, wait a minute, where did I start feeling like this, or where could this be stemming from? And then it made me remember times where I've told my mother about things that I wanted to do, even me wanting to go to art school, and she told me no, I couldn't go to art school. My mother, she's from Haiti. I was born here in America. And for my brothers and sisters whose parents are immigrants, like we have a different set of values and customs, and especially when it comes to education, when it comes to picking your career, it's either to be a doctor, a nurse, an engineer, a lawyer. That's it, like anything. I'm probably missing a couple, but anything else, no, you have to be either go into one of those professions. And one thing that my mom would always say is it's all about respect. You have to have such and such career for respect and stuff like that. So when I told her I wanted to go to art school, in fact, my art teacher in high school, he was the one who saw something in my work, and he was like, oh, Tarra, you're really talented. I could reach out to my contacts. He had contacts in Yale and Rhode Island School School of Design. And he told me that he can reach out to them and help me get into art school. I was so excited because I wanted to be an artist. So that day I told him, okay, I'm going to go tell my mom about it. And then I went to my mom and I told her that my art teacher is going to hook me up with his people. So see if I can get a scholarship so I can go to art school. And my mother was like, art school? What? You see this? You see this? You can't go to art school. You can't follow your dreams with this. That was just the mentality. If you're a certain color, you can't follow your dreams. You have to follow a specific career path in order to have a good life. So the next day I went to my art teacher and he was like, oh, so what did your mom say? He was like excited and stuff, ready to go. Because what he wanted to do, he wanted to help me put a portfolio together and get me scholarships. So I told him, I was just like, no. She said no. He was like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And he left it alone. I was devastated because I really wanted, that's what I wanted to do. That was my dream. I was devastated. So while I was in school, I took a couple of classes in art, and that's where friends started seeing my artistic abilities, and they were wowed. They were like, wow, Tarra. One of my friends, she's actually from Nigeria, and she was like, girl, you're wasting your time in college. What you doing? People would say these things, but there was just this stronghold just telling me that this is like, I'm not allowed to do that. Like, I just felt like I didn't have permission. All throughout the years, I just been wrestling with this. One minute I would go full in with art business and just paint and put my work out there, and then one minute I would just stop, and then I would disappear. Nobody would hear from me, nobody would see my work. So there's just been like this back and forth for me, and at some point I didn't even want to know or learn the business side of art. Like, I felt like I didn't realize how necessary that was, and I was just like, oh no, like, as long as people see my work, that's all that matters. I don't need to know the business side of it. And I rebelled against it. But yet it took me until my mid-30s to realize the importance of knowing the business side of it. If you're an artist, you're an entrepreneur. Even thinking about the times where I rebelled against the business side of it, or against being called or being seen as an entrepreneur, it was also just feeling like an imposter. Like, what? I felt like an imposter being an artist, being a teacher, being an entrepreneur. And it's like, okay, where do I belong? Where do I fit in? This whole time, I fit in exactly where I am. This is the arena that God wants me to show up. I've spent many years just being comfortable, just being in my comfort zone. I realized how harmful it is to allow other people to speak into your life. They could be coming from a good place. They could be thinking that they're looking out for you by telling you, oh no, do this, it's safer for you to do XYZ, when in reality what they're doing is they're projecting their own insecurities onto you, and they might feel like, okay, well, if they can't do it, then you can't do it. God could give you a vision that other people can't see. All you need is God's validation. Everything else is just noise. Even if your parents are telling you, well, no, you have to go this way, even though in your heart you feel like, no, I want to do this. This is what's in my heart. It brings you joy. You know that this is where you belong deep down, despite the imposter syndrome, and despite, that just coming out of nowhere, just attacking you. But deep down, you know this is something that you should be doing because you're passionate about it. You feel like you're in your element. Sometimes we allow other people who aren't qualified to speak into your life, and tell you what to do, and end up guiding you in the wrong direction and end up confusing you. That's what happened to me. Being in the comfort zone is actually a dangerous place to be in, because when you're just in that comfort zone, you're stuck. You know that you're being called to do something else. You're being called to do something higher. And it could be the thing that you need to do could be something that scares you, that terrifies you, that makes you feel like, well, no, like I can't do that. Who am I to do that? Where you're just waiting for other people to validate you, or you're just waiting for someone to give you that confirmation, when the whole time God was giving you confirmation, and God already told you that you're validated. God already established your worth. A lot of times we can get into our own way and allow other people's insecurity to affect our movements. This is not to blame other people, because people are going to say what they want to say. Trolls are going to come around, and people are just going to do them, but we have to do us. We have to be strong enough to do the thing anyway and not be afraid of the consequences. The consequences could be just people just questioning your character, or people questioning your qualifications. There's a lot of people, they want to see something on paper for them to know that you are qualified, when the whole time it was your experience that qualified you. When you're walking with God, when you allow God to guide you and you decide to yield your life to God and be obedient, you realize God needs you to be of service for other people. The same way there's people in your life who've helped you on your healing path, you could do the same for the next person too. And I know for myself, I need to stop disqualifying myself. If God put a vision in me, if God gave me an idea, it's my job to execute it. It's my job to have faith and to do it. This is my latest piece. It's inspired by birds of paradise. Birds have been something that I've always loved. I've always loved birds. Birds of paradise been something that's been on my mind, and so I started researching them. There's different types of species, and some of them, they would put on a dance, beautiful feathers. And I looked up like the symbolism of birds of paradise, and of course it was about shining. And it was saying that birds of paradise, it's because they put on like a performance, they put on a dance, they're putting themselves out there, have a lot of creative energy within them. And so I was like, oh man, I really need to focus on this bird of paradise and remind myself of the energy of a birds of paradise and just shine. I think that that's how we can overcome or combat these feelings of feeling like an imposter, is just going out there and just shining and say, I'm just gonna shine, I'm just gonna do it. There's nothing wrong with being modest, but sometimes we could be too modest, you know. Sometimes we could just be like, oh yeah, and it's like, no, you're it, you're the it, you know, like, another word I want to say, but I have a baby there, but you're the it. Put yourself out there. And this is something that I'm working on within myself, and conjuring that energy within myself, and not worrying about trolls, not worrying about, I don't even know what exactly I'm worried about, but I'm beginning to understand the importance of stepping out of that comfort zone and stepping into my purpose zone. So my daughter is screaming right now, so I'm just gonna end it here. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this message inspired someone. If it did, please leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if imposter syndrome is something that you deal with, and if you were able to overcome it, how were you able to overcome it? What have you learned? What are some of the lessons you've learned in terms of imposter syndrome? Don't forget to like, subscribe. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you soon. Goodbye.